When this whole coronavirus ends, and not a virus, but a psychosis, there are a lot of interesting things I will tell you about. A lot. But for now, think about these two questions. First question, coronavirus. Is it a man-made infection, or did it just accidentally appear out of thin air? Who needed it? Second question. We can't get an answer for this question yet, but tell me, in the whole world, starting with my colleagues in politics and ending in much lower ranks and others, did they try to use this sickness, virus, or psychosis in their own interests? Here are two questions I want you to think about. Who needs it, and who is using it in their own interests?
Who needs it and who's using it in their own interests? You may recognize that gentleman. He's the president of Belarus. And his name has been dragged through the mud constantly for the last 2 years, and particularly over the last few months with events ongoing in Ukraine. But we're not going to talk about him, but we are going to take his advice about these two questions. Who needs it and who is using it in their own interests? To wit, this blog here I've done this morning is entitled Paul Krugman, China, mRNA Vaccines and Right-Wing Populism. Activism in the Academy, Putin Once a Zhil Laner, always a Zhil Laner. So let's just play this now. Who needs it?
Now, Paul Krugman told me personally that it was totally crazy to talk about the money issue. He said, have you not, we were both from MIT, okay? We were graduated from the same school. We had the same professors, right? And what he told me, didn't they tell you? Never touch the money system. Never touch the money system. You can touch everything else. Never touch the money system. And the reason is there. You will not be invited in the right places, and you can kiss goodbye on the Nobel on anything else that is worthwhile getting. You're killing yourself academically if you touch the money system.
So you're killing yourself academically if you touch the money system. And Bernard Laitier there is referring to the academy, the intellectual academy, if you can call them that, of the priesthood of economics, regardless of which side they claim to be batting for. This is a truth that applies to them all. Whichever side, left, right, up, down, back, front, inside out, you cleave to, if you wish to be published, never touch the money system. And so we're going to dive on in to this thought crime. So what I'm going to do here is open that link there and just get this up here. So this is the Real World Economics Review blog, okay? And this is an article this morning by a gentleman called Dean Baker. And and this is where we get part of our title. Paul Krugman, Never Touch the Money System. China, mRNA Vaccines and Right-Wing Populism. And this troubled me when I read this, really on a thread of a lot of work I've been doing since the beginning of December last year, and dating all the way back actually to the late 2000s. Anyway, let's just read the first paragraph. I rarely disagree with Paul Krugman's columns, but every now and then he does say something that I have to issue with. In a column last month, Krugman complained about the enormous costs associated with China's zero COVID-19 policy. He tied it to its reliance on old-fashioned Chinese vaccines that use dead virus material instead of using the mRNA vaccines developed by researchers in the United States and Europe. Then I read on, and this title, I looked at that and, oh, that's promising. The mRNA mythology. What does it say? It's striking that so many people are anxious to wrongly blame the costs of China's zero COVID-19 policy on its rejection of US-made mRNA vaccines. To my view, this reflects an incredibly wrong-headed view of medical technology and the pandemic that has likely cost millions of lives and also substantially worsened inequality. Now then it goes on to say, because it doesn't make the point, it makes viewpoints I agree with. So this one, for instance, Moderna is the main villain in this story. It was paid 483 million for developing its vaccine, then another 472 million to conduct its phase 3 clinical trials. It also got advanced purchase agreements for hundreds of millions of doses at close to $20 a shot. If the vaccines were approved by the FDA, the shot cost around $1.50 to manufacture and distribute. Not surprisingly, with this amount of government support, Moderna had generated at least 5 new billionaires as of last summer. That's a who benefits kind of question. But it goes on. If we go back to the blog here, and you can see this paragraph here. To be clear, I'm very happy that we have the vaccines. I got 3 myself and no doubt wore a mask. But the question is whether the route we went was the most efficient. As I argued more than 2 years ago, we should have been looking to finance open source vaccine development, with all results being freely shared around the world. Now, something of a curate's edge, that statement, but it serves to demonstrate a point. And the point is this: a necessary belief to be accepted into the priesthood of economics, even heterodox or people who fancy themselves outside looking in, or outside the tent pissing in, as it were. They're not really. What they're doing is they subscribe to at least one of the necessary beliefs, which allows them to isolate one point and have a great big argument about that, but steer away from the real purpose. What is the purpose? What is it for and to whose benefit? And going on through this blog, I hope to sort of clarify answers to those questions. Now, this is a wonderful tune written actually about an old school friend of mine, and it's called Activism and the Academy. And so let's just have a little listen to this, which is one of my favorite tunes, I must admit. Sorry, Adam. Dear Mr. Tickle, though the wealth doesn't trickle, it pours into the hands of a few. And at 300K a year, I'm thinking one of them is you. And one of them is you. Now, this is a point on cognitive dissonance. The price of cognitive dissonance is quite high in terms of anxiety. And people dealing with doing things which are at odds with other belief systems. Where it becomes acceptable, which the Milgram experiments actually showed, is that if you pay the person who is promulgating an explanation of something which it clearly isn't, they tend to believe their explanation is true if they're paid a high enough price. That is interesting. This goes on to say, discussing jungle law and neoliberal beasts and the destruction of collegiality, Professor Tickle, do you still believe in the public university? Now, Adam is a good chap. He is a very old school friend of mine. And but that is a very fair question, I think, and it's a question which I would also put to Dean Baker here, who wrote this article, and you can read it in your own time. The links, etc., are in the blog. But moving on with this point, within the Real World Economics Review blog itself, I found several other recent postings which actually appeared with that article itself. Now, this one here is the role of ideology in economics, and you can click on that and read. It's quite short. It is well worth reading. One of the purposes, if not the main one, of mimicking physics was to argue that economics is a value-free science, as it is argued about the natural sciences. However, the truth is that every researcher starts her work expecting to arrive at some result. The critical issue is if, in the process of investigation, she is open to consider arriving at a different conclusion, although it may contradict her own and her colleagues' a priori beliefs. Any individual or social group has a certain set of beliefs and values, a certain Weltanschauung, I can't speak German, certainly not pronounce it, which permeates their ideas and attitudes. Although they seem quite naturally for them, they are prejudiced in the sense that they are opinions or feelings formed beforehand without a scientific knowledge to support them. And then this goes on to say, if you want to publish a paper in one of the top 5 journals, and PhD students badly need to, you'll write something within the perimeter of mainstream economics. For many young economists, if a paper on any topic cannot be published in a T5 outlet, the topic is not worth pursuing. So, yeah, on to the next article. This is graphics showing upward redistribution of income and wealth in the USA since 1979. You can go through them. They're all very, very interesting. But this graphic here is particularly interesting. It shows the actual distribution of wealth in the United States, what Americans think it is, and what Americans would like it to be. And you can see there's quite a difference between the three. Those three set of boundary conditions, as it were, or predicates of that metric. So that's that. Then within the comments, one of these blogs was a link to an old post by Doug Henwood, this from 2010, entitled "Strike Wave," which points out that these differences in income distribution and then also share of income in an economy have actually declined precipitously with the demise of strike action by Labour against their employers, and particularly it mentions the outlawing of strike action of public workers, etc. Now that is an interesting point. It's a point which I'm doing some work on at the moment, because I believe in a home owning democracy, and people said of the home owning democracy that Margaret Thatcher was very keen on it because workers without a mortgage don't strike. Now that is, on the face of it, a truism, but also it's perhaps the debt associated with the mortgage, the creation of the debt, and a form of debt slavery. And then there's the questions of wage slavery as opposed to serfdom. Now, I had a long chat with John Ward of the Slog earlier, and we sort of kicked this one round a little bit. It really is the old Fabian thing about it's like two wolves and a lamb discussing what's for dinner. And that's really what we're going to drive towards with this post. Who benefits? Is the oligarchy, the ruling class, etc.? And you'll see that to answer the first question, who's been benefiting from COVID, we come to this next slide again in the Real World Economics Review and blog. This one has got this graphic here, which sourced from Forbes magazine, which is basically the coffee table magazine of the wealthy and wannabe wealthy. And here we see between March the 18th, 2020 and March the 10th, 2022, the wealth increase in that 24 months. Okay. Elon Musk has seen his network measured in these ways rise from 24.6 billion to 234 billion. Jeff Bezos, that's 851%. Jeff Bezos has gone up 46%. Bill Gates is 32%. Warren Buffett 74%. Two techies coming up: Larry Page, Sergey Brin, both Google, 123%, 123% increases. That's interesting, isn't it? So do we think that that these could be some of the types of people referred to by the president of Belarus in that opening clip? The next point that I made in responding to this, the original post, which is the Paul Krugman and the right wing populist guy, was this. And this is a blog I did back in 2012 from a blog that no longer exists called Leaky Grammar. And it talks about Karl Popper and Ludwig Wittgenstein, and they had a bit of a spat. But it makes this point, which is a good point, and it's a guy called Worf, WHORF, said this. But this breaking of one's prison is clearly not a matter of routine. It can only be the result of critical effort and of a creative effort. In some ways, learning a new language is like expanding the horizons of our current prison, not simply because it forces us to experience new ways of seeing the world, but rather because it forces us to re-examine our own about. What is it about? What is it for? What is the purpose? Why? Why is that? Why are we doing this? What is it about? So were a language ever completely grammatical, it would be a perfect engine of conceptual expression. Unfortunately, or luckily, no language is tyrannically consistent. All grammars leak, and that actually, this is Edward Sapir on Language, 1921, and leaky grammar is the name of this this here. So if I open that link there and it comes up here, I mean, you can do this. The link to this blog is in the description, so it's taken a while to load. So here we go. Bum ba bum bum. You have a read of that, and I just want to find. Yeah, here we are. Look, he brings up Worf's notion of linguistic relativity. Linguistic relativity being the idea that language influences or perhaps even structures the way we see the world, and people with different languages therefore see the world in a different way. Very important point in terms of one size fits all, global serfdom, globalism, neoliberalism. Whatever label one tends to attach to these things usually come attached with a school of thought. So I had a comment on this blog here once. No, it was on Project Syndicate, and I mentioned neoliberalism, and someone sort of said, "Oh, well, you can tell you're one of those using such a term as neoliberalism." Where are we? So that's the intellectual prison quote there. So let's just go back to where we were, and that's that point there. And then here comes the mind map of all of this, and this is the web brain and the going direct paradigm. Growing direct is famously a paper prepared by Black Rock for the Federal Reserve and the going direct paradigm is what is happening in the financial markets at the moment with the resetting of the financial system. Going back to Bernard Laty, I suppose you must never look at the financial system, and this blog is about a post which talks about mRNA vaccines and, oh, you know, should be doing this, should be doing that, oh, it's all fish or whatever, but it doesn't talk about the money system. And the COVID-19 response, the vaccinations are all about the vaccine passports, which are basically identity passports, but they're not about identity. They're about identification and about rationing, and they are about reinforcing the system by which the process of transferring wealth and keeping wealth at the top of the tree to the ruling class, the oligarchy, call them what you will, but that is what more or less everything revolves around. That is the main lever of power. Main lever of power is debt. And Bernard Laty at the end of this post gives a very good talk on such points. So then I link then to a few other blogs which are on, you know, on these points, getting a bit more into money. This is The Road to Serfdom, Directions for a Blind Man. Not start from here. Krugman, DeLong, Keane, Varoufakis, Laitier, and Kreutz. Now, Helmut Kreutz was a German economist that did a lot of work on debt-free money, along with another German economist, Margaret Kennedy. But you can find all of those. And then this gentleman here, McIntyre, was the guy that debunked Michael Mann's hockey stick. And he's here because obviously he's come from outside of the climate academy, and hockey sticks are beloved of people pushing energy projects. You exaggerate your energy projects. So that's what that talk is about back in 2009. And if I were to tell you that basing the monetary system on carbon credits is a key part linked with rationing of carbon footprints through the digital currencies and digital passports for total surveillance, total control of people enjoying their new serfdom, believing themselves to be free. So that's that. Shock doctrine, re-establishing our civic bearings after the shock and awe of the pandemic. COVID Stroika is what I call COVID. And the Shock Doctrine is a book by Naomi Klein, which is a very good book, made into a film by a guy called Peter Winterbottom, who also made the film The Emperor's New Clothes, which Russell Brand was involved in. So that's that. And then we come to the blog that I did the other day about the 30th anniversary of Horizon, The Far Side, and I was interested to know why that film had been subjected to Room 101. And you know, as with all these questions and these inquiries and all the rest of it,
I'm a strange guy. Really? Yeah, I worry. I mean, little things bother me. I'm a worrier. I mean, little insignificant details. I lose my appetite. I can't eat.
You know, there's only one thing that I'm not clear about.
Actually, there is one thing. What other thing?
One more question, sir. How about those sacks of gold?
About those sacks of gold, the gold standard is a very deflationary monetary unit, and deflation and austerity is one of the great all in this together lies, which we've all been told in 2008. We're being told again now. Yes, about that sack of gold. So this is the Bernard Laitier talk, and he says that money is the water that we swim in, like a goldfish doesn't know it's in water unless you take the water away. And there's one interesting bit. Well, it's all interesting, but this bit here, we're just going to play this because I enjoyed this bit, called the learning pyramid.
Mutual learning. Now, what you're hearing today in a conference, you'll remember 5%, okay, on the average. If you read an article or a book that I wrote, you remember 10%. If we have a little session this afternoon about what the content of all this is, you remember 50%. But the most powerful tool will be when you teach him. Then you remember 90%. So our entire education system has been set up upside down, from kindergarten to university.
Very good point. The whole education system's been set up upside down, but so has the financial system, apropos efficient distribution of resources, using things economically and efficiently. That's not what it's for. It's for exercising power efficiently and ruthlessly, maintaining control and passing on that control and power and that occult knowledge of control and power to the predestined, the preordained, the unconditionally elected overclass. And that is what troubled me so greatly to read that blog. It always does when I read that blog, because just one of those necessary beliefs will collapse the learning and the learning opportunity, the moment of the learning opportunity to expand horizons and solve a problem. The system is set up to maintain the status quo, not to solve problems. And so when we identify problems and think, oh, they must be just really silly, they can't see it, it's not working, they must be stupid, it's not that at all. It's that people are trained to maintain the status quo and never mention the money system, as Bernard said in the first thing there. So this paper here is The Principles of Tax Policy by Dr. Adrian Wrigley, the late Dr. Adrian Wrigley, and that's worth reading because it actually, quite in a formal way, in a presentation to the House of Commons Committee, which was post the financial crisis, and I just want to read one paragraph from that, because it goes to that point about, what is the purpose of things when people have these inquiries? What are they really about? And the point is here. Hold on, I know what. I just put this in here. Public interest. There you go. Right. So, is it? How many times did it say it? Is it? Yeah, that's it. So it's this one here. So understanding taxation. What's taxation about? Don't go to Richard Murphy and his Joy of Tax. Keep this in mind. Keep this in your noodle. In this response, it is assumed the committee is seeking to further the public interest, even where this may conflict with the private interests, which usually dominate the analysis and debate. This will pose a major challenge to those who have learned their analysis exclusively through channels devoted to promoting private interests and must unlearn erroneous but persuasive assumptions and principles. There it is, right there, right there. So that's Dr. Adrian Ridley. Then the next thing, then here comes Sraffa, Wittgenstein, and Gramsci, and this amazing presentation, neoclassical political economy skating on thin ice. And I implore, if you don't follow any other links, to listen to that talk. Let's just listen to a bit of it.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Itzan. Today we are going to talk about neoclassical political economy, or economics as most people know it. Neoclassical political economy is the dominant ideology. It's the way in which most people understand the capitalist world we live in. But as we shall see, the underpinnings of neoclassical political economy are problematic, to put it politely. In many cases, they're simply dead wrong. So those who follow neoclassical political economy are skating on thin ice.
So that thin ice is something which obviously the ruling class are aware of, which is why there's such a crackdown, so much censorship, so much sensitivity to the question why being asked. If you ask why, you're almost immediately branded a conspiracy theorist or some sort of nut job or someone that should take their medication or whatever. Julian Assange makes this point actually in the When WikiLeaks Met Google interview with Eric Schmidt, when he says actually he celebrates censorship because he knows that the point in question is over the target, getting close to understanding what a solution is to an apparent problem. So the flak is heaviest over the target. And the increase in censorship means that the general public, people inquiring into these matters, are over the target. And if we keep going, if we keep pushing, we can win these arguments and insist upon a proper solution rather than the maintenance of the status quo. But to do that, we do have to let go of certain of those worldview type things, these a priori, so before the fact assumptions that we make. So do watch that, and it repays the watching. It's only 47 minutes long. So then I did a blog some time ago, Never Touch the Money System, Neoclassical Heterodox Economics, Two Cheeks of the Same Arse, which is entertaining. And then we get back to the mind map here. Now, if I open that, it'll open up this specific page. Here it is here. What bankers don't know. Now, this is a blog which David Malone did back in 2013, and it encapsulates all of these things. It's quite a long blog. It's worth reading. So are the comments. And within the mind map, you see, you can just click it down here. So if I click that, it will open. Just checking my browser, make sure I'm human. It's taking a while to log on here. Here we are. So the Gollum X1V blog, it was written by David Malone. A great deal has been written about what corrupt bankers knew and when they knew it. I want to look at what they didn't know, not from a desire to be perverse, but because what bankers knew and when, the stuff of good investigative journalism and legal cases, is what you need in order to prove an individual's guilt. What I'm concerned with is what hardworking bankers really didn't know, when with hindsight we can see it was astounding that they didn't know, because that points the finger at the whole system. To jail a few of the more flagrantly repulsive bankers while invigorating leaves the system untouched. It allows the guilty but uncaught to heave a sigh of release and be able to talk of a few bad apples and lessons learned. And by the way, where's my bonus? There's the cognitive dissonance. The bonuses are the price of living with that cognitive dissonance. So that's why that link is there. And I'm just going to talk something now about this mind map before hopping back to the end of the blog there. This is the 12 log 2-ators are 31% super cooperators within the Martin Nowak biological modeling of more or less all biologically based systems. And the nature red in tooth and claw assumptions, beloved of neoconservative, neocon, neoliberal, blah, blah, blahs. Whilst that is true for a proportion of all systems, super cooperators can and do form an ever constant in life, which is pretty much 31%, which basically on an exponential, that is they will always remain at that sort of level. Could be higher, but it's always that level, and that's interesting. Another blog of David's, Chinese wage rises. So these are links that I've off column rather than the what bankers know. Here's the Horizon 30th anniversary, the far side, and all of the things we've just discussed, and the two questions at the beginning, what you're not allowed to talk about, what's it for and who's benefiting. Those questions can lead to solutions, but solutions are not what the people who wish to remain in control and hold the view that the poor must remain poor so they remain obedient, which is actually a direct quote of Jean Calvin, the founder of Calvinism. So let's just go back to the going direct paradigm here. This is the central thing, and it can be read from left to right. Now here we have Aadhaar. We have Aadhaar here, okay, and I contend that Aadhaar is the question that must not be asked. It's never gone to. People will talk about the Chinese point system. They'll talk to other prototype systems that are in the work. People quite openly talking about central bank digital currencies now. But Aadhaar, which has been going actually for quite a long time, and there was even a popular movie made about it, which was never released in India. It is something we are really not supposed to look at. If we just go back to the blog here we are, just in the interests of doing more thought crime. Aadhaar. Aha, so that's what all this is about. Ranjan has a London conversation with, it's actually Piers Corbyn, not Piers Morgan. And if we open that, you can see Ranjan is interviewing Piers Corbyn, who is blissfully aware of a lot of this stuff. I think he just doesn't know. And that's because he's cleaving to the football match, the left, right, the red team, the blue team, and explaining a worldview just from one perspective, even two or three perspectives. But the whole, in all its beauty, all the emergence beauty of a infinite and ever-expanding universe, yes, there is free will. So hold that thought, and let's be pleased about that. And I'm going to play out and end here this blog just with the rest of the George Michael track, Wag the Dog, and here we have the president of Belarus providing a rap over the top of it.
Someone has declared that it's a war and that we need to get the yellow vests off the streets. Someone else is having an election right now. Someone else is something else. And everyone starts to play games, but they are playing with fire. But we will speak on the subject later. A lot of people appeared now, maybe in Belarus, not as many because I have officials taking care of it, but people that want to get hype from this It has become a trend online. We started to catch such people and started to ask of them. You know, psychosis is such a thing that it's never enough of it. You always have to add fuel to the fire, warm it up, show off. And these so-called positions are trying to use it against governments. But I ain't staying quiet. Time will judge all of us. But just remember, no one and not from anywhere won't give us anything. So, psychosis, you guys know what a psychosis is. Does all of this starting to look like a psychosis? I think so.
We're gonna shoot up. We're gonna shoot up.
And that's it. That's a wrap. Good afternoon.